Ladies and gentlemen, I join you right here from the corridors of power in Washington. Joining me today are two gentlemen from both sides of the political divide. Stephen Moore, senior advisor to former President Trump, also advising him on his campaign and the way forward. And also joining me this afternoon is Shri Thanedar, an Indian-American congressman whose Hindi has many fans back home and who has pledged his unwavering support for Kamala Harris. Republicans haven't made it the Indian Americans haven't made it to Congress, but some on the Democrat side have done so. So, Stephen Moore, what do you think going forward the relations between India and the United States of America?
Well, look, India is one of the most important countries in the world today. And by the way, I want to say this as well, that Indian Americans have been phenomenally successful in the United States. A good example sitting right next to me. It's if you look at all the ethnic groups and immigrant groups that have come to the United States, immigrants have been amazingly successful. So they're a great benefit to our economy, and I think Donald Trump understands that. Trump wants a very strong and favorable relationship with India because Trump does view China as really an adversary and an enemy, and the hope is that we can kind of unite the rest of the world against China predatory economic practices and their military aggression.
How do you see, Shri Thanedar, Indo-American ties, and will they have, calibrated difference depending on who makes it to the White House, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump?
Oh, absolutely. This is an important election. Donald Trump is unpredictable. The tariffs that he's talking about is going to hurt the relationship between the United States and India. The tariff that he's talking about is going to raise cost for Americans. Each American may end up putting $4,000 more per year because of his tariff policies. So I think Kamala Harris would be the right choice for India, U.S. relationships. And Modi ji had a great relationship with Trump, but he also had a great chemistry with Joe Biden, So it is not that only he could have good relation with Modi ji. I think Kamala Harris and Modi ji will have a great relationship and will take this relationship further. So Modi ji's vision, his leadership, and he's a statesman and he understands what needs to be done to grow this relationship. And I'm very excited with the Kamala Harris presidency, which looks like a likely thing to happen now.
You agree? Kamala Harris leading in the polls actually means she's got a huge advantage this election?
Well, look, the polls have this thing razor tight, and we don't know who's going to win. I think Trump will probably win, but, nobody can really know right now. That's unknowable. I would say that we in the Trump campaign want this election to be all about the economy, because Americans have really suffered under Joe Biden and Kamala's leadership. So the average family in America, the people just in the middle, have lost about $2,000 in real income because the inflation has been so high under Biden and Harris. That compares, by the way, with under Trump. In his 4 years in office, the average family gained $5,000 in income. So we think that when you look at the economic issues, it's really pretty clear that Trump's policies are superior. One of the things that worries me the most about Kamala Harris's agenda is that she's proposed a $4.6 trillion tax increase, and I think that would be devastating to the American economy. There's never been a country in the history of the world that taxed its way to prosperity. Kamala seems to want to try that. I think it would have very negative effects on our small businesses and families.
Shri Thanedar, do you think economic policies is what is leading to the very polarized rhetoric this election? Or do you think it's going to be, more important issues as far as, the conversation in the campaigns is all about, and especially Two attempts at the life of Donald Trump. How does that make Secret Service and the Biden administration look like?
Well, look, the assassination attempts, we all condemn it. There is no place for violence in politics, no place for violence in democracy. So we all must join together in condemning those assassination attempts. But look, the economy, looking at the economy, stock market is all-time high. Just yesterday, stock market hit the highest record. Now, 16 million jobs created by Joe Biden, fastest recovery since COVID by any developed country. Inflation now coming down. Fed has just cut the rates. So I think Kamala Harris is going to be good for the economy, as opposed to the tariffs, as opposed to the tax cuts Trump gave, $1.5 trillion tax cuts for the rich and the wealthy. Now, when you give money to the wealthy, the idea is that it will trickle down to the poor, and it never happens. It will never has happened. And the tax cuts to the rich hurt our economy. Kamala Harris will put this thing back on, continue to create jobs, continue to help grow small businesses. I'm just excited about a Kamala Harris presidency.
So, Stephen Moore, let me ask you, when Donald Trump says that Comrade Kamala Harris is more on the left of the center, do you think he's being fair? Do you think that's the way people of America would look at her?
They should. I mean, she has a record. She was been in the United States Senate for 4 years. This is kind of hard to believe. It's a point that Donald Trump should make every single speech he gives, is that when Kamala Harris was in the United States Senate, she had the most liberal voting record of any senator, including Bernie Sanders, who is an avowed socialist. So, yeah, she has embraced the left-wing agenda on everything from taxation to out-of-control government spending. She's a fanatic on climate change issues. And so, it makes me nervous that the American people would vote for someone so far to the left. She's not a Bill Clinton moderate. She's a very, very far left liberal. And, I don't think the country is there. Now, she's trying to kind of run as a more Bill Clinton centrist Democrat, and she may be able to pull that off, but I think it's a masquerade, and I'm hoping the American people can see through that. Big government and more taxes is not the solution to America's problems.
Let me ask you, Shri Thanedar, Kamala Harris, her views on Kashmir, which are very close to the heart of the Modi administration, the abrogation of Article 70, her position on that. Do you think that could be a little bit of a speed breaker in the ties between India and America, were she to continue in the same tone and tenor as she has expressed in the past?
I think the focus is going to be more on the economic policy. India, 10th largest economy, 5th largest, soon to be 3rd largest economy under the great leadership of Modi ji. Now, the focus is going to be on economic relationship. The focus is going to be challenging China. China's aggression, so that is where most of the focus is going to be. I don't think there are minor issues about human rights that are happening is going to be center stage. The center stage is going to be the economy, collaboration, military collaboration between India and U.S., collaboration at the defense level, collaboration on a technology level. That is what I see as the future of India-U.S. relationship.
How would you see the human rights violations in countries like Bangladesh, where Hindus are at the receiving end? Look at the way Pakistan has treated minorities. How come those issues don't find a mention in some of the presidential positioning, as they see on topics?
Oh, those issues are very critical. I was one of the first congressmen to protest what was happening to the minority Hindus in Bangladesh. Those issues need to be addressed. There is no doubt about it. We are also getting attacks on Hindu temples in the United States, some 30 or so temples. 2 days later, I'm going to be going to New York visiting the Bab's temple that was attacked recently. So these attacks are happening all over the world, and Hindus need to unite. They need to stand up, and because Hindus are a very peaceful, quiet community. But when you see these attacks happening, whether it's Bangladesh minority Hindus or the Hindu temples in the United States, it's time for the Hindus to unite, stand up, and say no more. We will not tolerate such attacks on Hinduism anymore.
But Kamala Harris does take a position on human rights of minorities in India, but not such a vocal position on Hindu minorities in other countries.
And we will hold Kamala Harris administration to that. We will continue to put this pressure on State Department as we are doing it with Biden administration. We'll continue to do this with the Harris administration because these attacks on Hindu temples have to stop. These attacks on Hindu minorities in Bangladesh have to stop.
Talk of President Donald Trump. The perception is, and Shri Thanedar said it as well, the perception is that stability is not his best virtue. He might just one fine morning wake up and decide to do something completely different. Do you think that will play on the mind of American voters, number one, and number two, on countries like India, which are looking at stable long-term relations?
So the interesting thing about this election is that we actually have Donald Trump, who was president for 4 years, and we have Kamala Harris, who's basically running, on a continuation of Joe Biden's policy. So all we have to do is just put them side by side. I have a new book coming out in a couple of weeks called The Trump Economic Miracle, and I looked at all of the major economic statistics, including the stock market. It is true the stock market's at an all-time high, but remember, prices are 22% higher. So when you adjust for inflation, the stock market's done much more poorly under Biden than it has under Trump. Virtually every statistics, whether it's grocery prices, whether it's the price of gasoline, whether it's small business conditions, whether it's the ability to buy a home, pay a mortgage, every one of those statistics showed much better improvement under Trump than under Biden. So the point I'm making is we don't have to sort of speculate, gee, what would happen if Trump were president? We do know what would happen because he's already been president. And we had peace and prosperity under Trump. And I think that is the real selling message for Trump. Whereas under Biden, we've had turmoil around the world, and we've had a lousy economy that really has hurt middle-class families. They're poorer today than they were 4 years ago. That's not a record I'd want to run on.
Are you discounting the pandemic in these years on the economic performance of Biden's presidency?
Sure. Well, that's true. We had the pandemic in 2020. We made the greatest mistake in the history of the United States, where we closed down our economy and our schools and our hospitals, and God forbid that we ever do that again. I hope we've learned our lesson, what a catastrophe that was. And it didn't stop the spread of the virus. It didn't save lives. But even accounting for, I remember in 2020, prior to the pandemic happening, I was like, oh my God, this is the best economy America's ever had in the history of the country. And then, of course, when you shut down half your economy, you're going to have a recession. We were coming out of the recession really strongly in the second half of 2020. And then, Biden comes in and spends $5 and $6 trillion that I think shipwrecked the economy.
Shri Thanedar?
Well, look, U.S. recovered from COVID faster than any other country in the world. So this is really... we have two different visions, night and day difference. Mm-hmm. We have Kamala Harris, and then we have Donald Trump. So erratic. You never know what he's going to expect. His close relationship with North Korea, his close relationship with Putin, his love for dictators. And then all of these crazies like immigrants are eating dogs and cats. People are tired of this kind of weirdness that we are seeing from this Trump ticket. And people want something that they can trust, something that is a little more reliable, and we can't have the chaos of Trump anymore.
What about the Republicans pointing out that the vilification of Donald Trump, President Joe Biden's statement that let's take Donald Trump in the bullseye? I mean, What would you say all about that? Making a monster out of Donald Trump, is that fair?
Well, look, within the Republican Party, a Vice President Cheney is not endorsing Kamala Harris. There are so many Republicans are supporting Kamala Harris because this Donald Trump is you cannot trust Donald Trump on what is he going to say, what is he going to do, is so erratic. And the Republican, this has become a cult. Party of one person. He's really fighting for himself to keep himself out of jail, out of prison, and that's it's all about. He's not thinking about the people, the American people. He's thinking about Donald Trump. He's always thought about Donald Trump, and that's not what people want. And that's why I come from Michigan. Michigan is a very battleground state, and so is Pennsylvania. And Kamala Harris is now leading in every battleground state. North Carolina, they have another of Trump-like Republican gubernatorial candidate who's just talking all this and doing all sorts of crazy things. Well, enough of it. Even Republicans are now saying there's a huge number of Republicans for Kamala Harris. And that just says that the party is tired of Donald Trump.
Who's going to win? Well, nobody's a crystal ball gazer, but yes, it's a close election, and whichever way you look at it, it is going to be Indo-U.S. relationships that are going to go forward. Calibrations may take place, but the broad sentiment of India being a very important country in the world today, sitting at the high table with the United States of America to look at the geopolitical challenges across the world, is going to be a major factor whenever foreign policy of the next president is decoded. And that's where India stands today. As the world looks at the American elections, they will also be looking at ties between India and America. Thank you very much, Shri Thanedar. Could you say a few words in Hindi to our audiences back home?
मोदी जी ने जो कुछ किया है भारत के लिए, इसके लिए हम सब इंडियन कम्युनिटी जो है अमेरिका में वो बहुत खुश है. मोदी जी हैज शोन सच अ ग्रेट विजन फॉर इंडिया. इंडिया का जो प्रोग्रेस हुआ है जो इकोनॉमी में, तो बहुत अच्छा हो रहा है. और मुझे उम्मीद है कि कमला हैरिस और मोदी जी, उनका भी केमिस्ट्री जैसा ही अच्छा होगा जैसा जो बाइडेन और मोदी जी का है.
आप डेमोक्रेट हैं, कांग्रेसमैन हैं, लेकिन दिल है हिंदुस्तानी.
हाँ जी.
This will come as music to people back home in India. Thank you very much, Stephen Moore, and thank you, Shri Thanedar, for joining me on this very, very interesting exchange.
Thank you, Navika ji. Thank you for having me.